Hey everyone, my name is Jordan Gurwitz, and today I'm doing my movie review presentation on the movie Moneyball. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, the movie, summarize it up, and I'm also going to focus on the five terms that I'm using to describe the movie. Media framing is one of them, intersectionality is another one of them, stacking, hegemonic masculinity, and ideology. So to summarize the movie Moneyball, the Oakland Athletics were a struggling team that was a small market, struggling baseball team that was having a hard time, keeping up with the big guys like the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they were trying to find a way to build a good team without having the same financial resources, having the same level of talent, and so you know with the financial struggles, Oakland Athletics general manager Billy Beane and his colleagues started really kind of taking to heart this whole analytical approach to baseball. And they started really using specific pinpoints of different statistics and different attributes of each player and how they could maximize those to get a great team out of it. And so the movie's really chronicling the process of one of their seasons and talks about just what that took in putting it together and how an improbable Oakland Athletics team that was under 500, that was performing really terribly, is now a team that was winning 22 straight games, that was supposed to be a World Series favorite, but was not, had basically no chance at all, and how they were able to, using this analytical and statistical method of baseball stats and statistics and analytics, that they were able to build a good team. And it's something that's really important to the modern day game in all of sports, but really the Athletics were they were innovators in the game of baseball, and it's definitely, the Oakland Athletics have been one of the more forward-thinking teams and organizations as far as analytics and all that goes in a modern game, and they're really the reason that baseball is the way it is today. It would not be the same sport without the Oakland Athletics and Billy Beane. And so I'm going to talk about some of my terminology. So the first one of these is media framing. So media framing refers to how the media packages and presents certain information to the public. It puts information in particular context, and typically it tries to encourage or discourage certain interpretations. So something that happens throughout the movie is that we're seeing that everyone thinks that the Athletics are crazy. They're trading away star players. They're trading away a lot of different things. They're cutting people that are supposed to fit the specific mold of what they want the team to look like. And the media is really hitting Billy Beane hard. They're bashing him, saying that the Athletics are a laughing stock. They're making mistakes. And it's kind of cool. They do play real live media video clips throughout the course of the movie of what real people said. And a lot of the time it's very critical of what they did. And so the media is really framing them as they don't know what they're doing. They're behind everyone else. This is a disaster. But as they start to get better, as they start making moves, as the team starts winning games, they start to change the narrative and say, how is this happening? This is a good baseball team. This is innovative. And so the narrative, because of the way the media is framing it, starts to encourage and discourage these different ways of looking at the game. So, and looking at the movie and looking at the team. So that's one way that media framing was definitely very relevant in the movie. The second one of these was stacking, and that refers to how coaches and scouts, they try to steer certain bodies towards certain positions. So one of the main things in the movie is that part of the way that they build the team is that they were moving certain players to certain positions to maximize their talent levels. For example, the manager wanted Carlos Pena to be playing at first base. Billy Beane wanted another player to be playing at first base, and so because it wanted to fit the specific mold, but the manager wanted Carlos Pena to play first base because he fit the body type, he fit the way that they looked, he had the skill set for a first baseman. but that's what the manager wanted. But Billy being the general manager, he didn't want that, and he ended up trading Carlos Pena to Detroit. There's a famous segment in the movie where the manager says, "I'm starting Pena," and the GM says, "No, you're not." And he says, "Oh yeah, what's stopping you?" He said, "Because I just traded him to Detroit." And so that kind of is an example of how the athletics in this movie, but also just they were really steering towards part of their identity was using these statistics and the analytics to drive certain players certain ways. There's also a famous scene from when he's talking with the scouts and he's encouraging these feelings in the older men who were paid to imagine what kind of pro ball player a young man could become. The boy had a body you could dream on, ramrod straight and lean, but not so lean you couldn't imagine him filling out in that face beneath an unruly mop of dark brown hair. The boy had the sharp features the scouts loved. Um, so there's this example of that, that there's just this certain identity that it has. That there's this certain way they should look. There's this certain way that the players should be to fit the mold of a baseball player. The third term I want to talk about is hegemonic masculinity. Talks about power and winning, and that this ideal form of masculinity is constructed and promoted through competitive sport. There's 5 specific features that it talks about. So number one is physical force and control. You can kind of take that a couple ways. Physical force, obviously, in baseball, there's a lot. It's a contact sport. For what that's worth, from a control standpoint, Billy Beane really controls the team and how it's playing and how it's running, and so he kind of has this sort of control of how things need to be. Feels like that's the case. Occupational achievement. Obviously, it's a sport. They win a lot of games. That's the focus. That's the goal at the end of the day is to win ball games. Um, Familial patriarchy is a bit of a different one in this sense because he is divorced, and that's another point in the movie is his daughter and the relationship he has with his daughter. And so he has a relationship with her, but he's not really the head of the family since he's really on his own. Frontiersmanship. Um, so he's a former baseball player. He had a short career and he had a lot of promise, but he never really lived up to his potential. And so he kind of feels this need to exude the masculinity and some of those features, for example, and he kind of takes out that strength and that testosterone type of energy throughout the movie as he and kind of exudes it into baseball. And obviously heterosexuality, he's straight and has a daughter and used to be married and an ex-wife. Fourth term to talk about is ideology, which is a larger system of ideas that shape the practice of a group. Obviously, what made the Oakland Athletics so famous is that they used this analytical and statistical framework as their ideology to how to build the team and run the organization. And so that was really what made the movie Moneyball what it was, is that there was a certain way that they were going to build the team. They were going to look at specific things, and they had this overarching mindset of this is what we need to go in when we're looking to get players to play for our team. And so that was a big one. And my last thing is intersectionality, which is a social theory that suggests that we each fit into multiple identity variables and that these variables work in groups. So I have a couple of examples of this. So, for example, there's an outfielder for the team that's a prominent part of the movie. He's a veteran outfielder named David Justice. He's African American, and he's an outfielder for the Oakland Athletics. And so that's something that you don't typically see a lot of black baseball players, not as much. It's not as common. And so he fits these different variables. If he's he's also biracial, so he's biracial. He plays baseball and he's an outfielder. For example, Billy Beane, he's a former baseball player. He's white. He's a general manager and he's a father, but he's also divorced. So he has they have these different parts of their identities that make them part. There's not something that's mutually exclusive to each and every one of them and their identities, and that they fit into different variables that make them who they are. So, in conclusion, Moneyball was it's a great movie, but it's the story of it's, I think, what's most important, and it's really a critical look into how sports and everything is being done nowadays. And without those practices of Moneyball, we would not be the same way that we are in sports today. Thank you for watching, and roll tide.